And if I go like that, then hopefully you can all see the slide. And what I'm going to be talking about today is this sense of leading from within. And the work that I've done to explore various aspects of this, which I've called the 7 dimensions of conscious leadership. Okay, so why does this matter? Today, you'll all have your own experiences of this, and I really encourage you to put your comments in the chat, how these things might be resonating with you as I go through them. You know, AI is an extraordinary disrupting force today, and it's just in its tiny infancy. I mean, it's been going since the 1990s, but it's grown so fast. Now everybody's talking about it. All organizations are trying to adopt it in various ways, which is producing all sorts of change and challenge. As leaders, one of our challenges is how do we manage ourselves? How do we manage our people through this? Particularly as there's so many senses of what's going to happen to me? Am I going to be made redundant? Is AI going to take my job? And you know, if you look just at British Telecom in this country, which is a very large telecoms organization, they announced a little while ago that they were going to be laying off something like 20,000 people, and they were going to replace their functions with AI. And that just creates such an unsettling sense amongst people. A lot of the leadership models, and I'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through, are not up to the job that's required now. There's all sorts of new challenges that are coming up, and these are, I mean, one of them is the drive to sustainability. How do we make our organizations more sustainable? It's a real push, a social push for people to be sustainable. And at the same time, there's a kind of push back, as there has been, we call it the DEI backlash, where companies have felt the social pressure to be more inclusive, to be more sustainable, and yet a lot of organizations are pushing back now and saying, well, no, we have to focus on the bottom line, we have to focus on our shareholders, which are all sort of old models. So there's this tension between what the wider world, if you like, the social conscience is trying to make organizations do, and what a lot of organizations are feeling like they still have to focus on. Financial markets are in constant flux. Well, you will see that every day. And I think for a lot of people, this is a real sort of sense of what does it all mean? The pound is going up, the dollar's going up, Bitcoin has gone through the roof. What does it all mean to us as individuals? And the point really is here, as leaders, how do we manage our people through all these uncertainties? That's what this is all about. Welcome, Suhair, from
Vancouver, Canada.
Yes, yes. I was looking for the word, but anyway, right
Yeah.
over on the west coast in Canada. And then there's this great question about, is education leading to produce the leaders that we require for tomorrow? And some people would say, really, it isn't. And so what do we do about that? Because as organizations, we welcome people in, or we draw people in and are they resourced to manage and lead in today's environment? And if not, how, what do we do about it? How do we set them up? Do we train them? Because a lot of organizations have pulled back from training budgets, which is leaving people being promoted because they were good at something, but not necessarily because they have the skills that they need to be able to manage. So, all in all, we need new ways of leading. And I just put this slide up here now. I'm sure pretty much all of you have been involved in change programs in one sense or another. But the fact is that very few of them actually are successful. And the thing about that is that it's it's not an individual's fault so much. It's not your fault, but it is all these issues that come together that make these programs fail. So let's look at the 7 dimensions of conscious leadership. This journey. And don't try and read all this. I'm going to go through each one, but essentially, the seven I call them dimensions, but in a sense, they're so interlinked. But I've tried to separate them out in a sense so that we can get a better understanding of the elements of conscious leadership going from the old to the new. So let's look at these. And as I say, I'm just reading Renato's comment here. The many forces around us selling to manipulate us, our beliefs and our actions. Absolutely. The environment of the social media and the manipulation largely that is marketing today, to put it with not too fine a label on it. So as we go through, if you sort of resonate with any of these, do make comments in the chat. It would be really good to sort of get your feel for it. So the old management, it was in 1911 that Frederick Winslow Taylor wrote a book, The Principles of Scientific Management. And really what's extraordinary is that since 1911, the management approach has largely been the same in most organizations. It's what has been taught in business schools. It's very top down, it's hierarchical. You see a presenting problem, you have to find a solution for it. And it's used this sense of scientific management, which has seen most people as pieces of a machine. And yet, what we need in today's leadership is a new sense of this, where people are much more flexible, they adapt, they're not, the top-down sense is much more gentle, and it's much more about helping people to see what is the outcome that we require, not so much about this is what you've got to do. And it looks for people who think for themselves, and this sense of complexity, which takes the thinking way beyond the old mechanistic idea of a machine. So then there's going from the individual to the systemic. And in the old perspective, what we've been looking at is seeing problems in 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 isolation and looking for individual solutions for these problems. And really what that does, and I've seen it over and over again. I mean, do give me some examples in the chat. The the issue is when you see a problem, you find a solution to that problem, and then what happens is that in creating the solution to that problem, you also create several more problems that later on you're going to have to solve. And what we're really thinking about is how can we look at things systemically? And the example that I like to give about this is within one's own body, our own body, where, for instance, if you go to if you're walking along and you get a pain in your knee and it gets worse and worse, you go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, it looks like there's deterioration in your knee. You need to go to a knee surgeon, and the knee surgeon says, right, okay, we'll replace your knee. And actually, the problem is in your back, and it's a reflected issue that's happening in your knee. And the problem will reappear unless we can address the problem in the back. And that's the whole thing about a systemic approach, is understanding the connections, understanding how things are all connected, and finding ways to be sustainable through understanding the impact of our interventions. I don't know if there's anybody who's got any sort of examples of this in the organization that they work in, but certainly somebody's asking me if I meant to record. And the answer is yes. So it is recording. So hopefully that's all right for those who are not able to be here. So let's move on from the unconscious. Traditional leadership is driven through habits. And as I said right at the beginning, so many people are promoted because they were good at what they were doing then, not because they have the skills in the new position that they've been promoted into, which means that the unconscious patterns, which we all have, tend to drive behavior. And really, what we are looking for in the new way of being in leadership is to be conscious, which means that we need to be aware of the patterns that drive our behaviors. We need to that leads to intentional choices as opposed to people making decisions, taking choices, really because that's how their unconscious is driving them. So we really need people to be aware, self-aware, and that takes work. It takes work. It's not something that very many people can do without having done some really deep reflection. And that takes time, and it takes investment from the organization. So then let's look at from the outer to the inner. And what I'm talking about there is I've seen quite a lot of this in recruitment very recently, where people are still being recruited because they have a technical expertise, and yet more and more organizations are now realizing that the technical expertise can be taught. What we need is a much a greater level of self-awareness, intuitive wisdom, the human being, if you like. When people recruit, when organizations recruit people, because of, if you like, the humanity, the intrinsic knowledge and wisdom that an individual has, the skills and the technical expertise can be then trained in. And by the way, actually, I think that a part of the inner resources, it's not the intuitive wisdom actually comes with age, largely, not entirely, but it largely. And so there is this, well, there's a lot of young CEOs who see that 50 is about sort of the top end age, yet there are people who are in the employment pool until much later in years. And one of the things they bring is experience. And you can't underestimate the value of experience. And then there's moving, and as you can see, these dimensions, they are intertwined. They're not sort of very distinct in many ways, but nevertheless, I think they have their own identity, if you like. So we're going from the purely rational, the logical thinking, which tends to be very mechanistic, actually. One of the difficulties of this kind of thinking is it's black or it's white. It's on, it's off. And yet, all our challenges, but really, are associated with complex situations where actually the data, whilst incredibly helpful, doesn't give you all the answers. And what we need is emotional intelligence, we need cultural intelligence, we need decision making, which is has this sense of the complexity, the interconnectedness of things, which the facts and the figures and analytical approaches aren't so hot at really giving the best view of. Then again, it's sort of really sort of connected to what I've been saying here, but what we're looking for here is instead of people just being cerebral and disconnected from themselves, let alone anybody else, where because they don't have any outlets for some of the stress that they build up, we find a lot of illness. And my goodness, the statistics on stress and well-being or good health in organizations is really terrifying at the moment. So what we're looking at is how can we look after ourselves and how can we help our people look after themselves. So, you see in WeWorks and places like that now, people can take time out to go within, and it is this sense of awareness of the body and also at a real systemic level, what is our place in the whole system of the planet? We're in a situation now where everybody's going for growth, and yet we are in an environment where growth is dependent on more and more resources. But it's quite simple. We live on a planet with limited resources. So the whole concept of growth for its own sake actually is extremely destructive. And what we need is a sense within ourselves of connection to the wider system. And what we find is that when people have that connection to themselves and to their place within a larger system, actually the decisions that they make, are very often they make a much better sense. And this, I remember working in an organization in Nigeria, and the local CEO was so proud of the work that he was doing with the local community and actually contributing to the local schools. And he was really proud of this. And it was a big, rich company, and they were really, whilst at one level they were really affecting the habitat. At least there was this sense of how do we give back, and they really wanted to give back to the educational system, and they were donating things and helping with teachers and all that kind of stuff. And then the CEO, actually, who came from the States, to have the presentation from the local CEO. The local CEO said, this is what we're doing with the community. And the CEO from the States said, I'm not interested in any of that. Don't waste your time on that. What's your bottom line? What's happening? And it's like this crushed the local CEO. And for me, sort of spoke about a sense of blindness, about an awareness of what actually impact we need to take responsibility for. And so I think this is something that people are learning about, but we have to sort of help them see that the impact of decisions isn't just on some small part, but when you make a decision, it has a much broader impact. And then the seventh dimension, we have for depending on where you sit on the spectrum, you could say for the last 2,000 years, we live in a system which essentially has been designed by men for men, not with malice forethought, but nevertheless, the working environment, which particularly has developed since the beginning of the 20th century, if not quite a lot before that, has been structured around this mindset that the woman stays at home, she brings up she looks after the home, and she brings up the children. That's her function, and the man goes to work. And it fascinates me now, particularly with women-run organizations. I often say to them, "Why do you conform to the model that has been designed without your needs in mind?" So, what would a much more balanced approach be for an organization that really took into consideration the the strengths? And here I sort of depart a little bit from the man-woman model to the masculine-feminine, because we all have masculine and we all have feminine aspects in us. But what the workplaces have kind of demanded is that everybody conforms to a largely masculine model, which means, and I personally have seen this a lot, is that senior women in organizations tend to get there because they have had to conform to a masculine model. And what we lose in that are the feminine attributes, which some men have a lot of, but sort of statistically more women have. And these are things that we need a lot of, not to exclude the masculine. That's the difficulty here. I think a lot of people here, when they talk about empathy and emotional intelligence and compassion, and all these kind of things. A lot of people hear that as, well, that's if I've got to do all that, I've got to drop the masculine aspects of being able to drive and so on. And we need both. We need both. But we need the feminine as well as the masculine. And that means that we can probably afford to let go of some of the power driving. And you're seeing this being acted out in the world a lot at the moment. And where there's this, if you're really in a competition, then you have to say, it's win. If I win, you lose. And Simon Sinek has put a really good book together about this, if you follow him, where he's really talked about the finite game and the infinite game. And the most organizations are based on the finite game. We see it in sport all the time. At the end of a sporting occasion, you're looking for somebody who's won and therefore somebody who's lost. But in organizations and the corporate world, you don't need that. You don't need to have to win in order for somebody else to lose. You just have to win in the sense that you have to be the best that you can be. And each day, you're asking yourself and the organization, are we the best that we can be? It's a different mindset. And it does lead to much more collaboration. And it leads to a sense which is much more inclusive. And that's one of the things that really is often under attack. So I don't know if anybody wants to make any comments about that last point. I know some people feel that that's a little bit contentious, but really I'm not talking about men and women when I'm talking about the masculine and the feminine. I'm talking about these traits which we really need, and we need the mix. That's the important thing. So those are the seven dimensions that I've been through, and so looking at this from a slightly different angle, change really is brought about when you look at things systemically. And wherever change is brought and tried to be brought about without looking systemically, it fails. Because what it does is breed resistance and what's the word? People saying, "Oh, look, it's another change project. If you keep your head down, don't worry. In 6 months, they will have forgotten this, and they'll be coming up with something else." This cynicism, and that's why we need to be thinking in this systemic way. And in order to do that, you really do need those core skills of self-awareness and also listening. We have the wisdom inside us if we have the ways to access it. And if we have these things, then whatever AI brings, we have this sense of internal serenity that enables us to ride the waves of the disruption that is taking place. And this sense that sustainability, which is a fantastic aim, also has its limitations, particularly when you're talking about growth and this tension between how do we grow and how do we be sustainable, and why would we want to grow, and is sustainability the real key criteria? And I know, Renato, you and I, we've had this conversation about this. So building resilience when there's so much uncertainty on the financial scene, Starbucks, yeah. There's I don't know whether you've seen, but Starbucks are having a kind of a tussle at the moment with some of their workers going out on strike because the new CEO is being paid 10,000 times what somebody serving a coffee is being paid. And you could say that that's a little out of balance. So there is this social tension with more and more organizations paying their executives huge amounts of money, and yet so many of the people who work for these organizations actually feeling like they can't pay for the basics. And that is something that has to be managed. And we as leaders have to manage that. And that's a really a real tension area. So where's this all leading? Well, we have this program. There's a couple of people here. Andrew, welcome if you're here from Kenya. We have a wonderful spread from the west coast of the United States right through to the eastern side of Africa. So it's a very exciting mix that we have here. But anyway, this program, 10 consecutive weeks, and the next program is starting next Tuesday, the 21st of January, 7 p.m., same time as this webinar. And what we do in that is we spend an hour each session online, and we conduct inquiries, normally in pairs, and sometimes in the whole group, with breakouts, exploring the topics, and I'll take you through those in a moment. There's some pre-reading which sets people up to be ready and having already thought through things to a degree, either watching some videos or doing a few exercises beforehand. And as I've sort of highlighted, there are delegates from really a wide variety of backgrounds and industries. And the beauty of that is that everybody brings their own issues, which we then work through together. And that enables us to see things through different eyes. And that's where, however much I might present things, actually, the greatest learning comes from each other. And I think that's a beautiful way to learn. So, just to give you a sense, there's 10 modules, as I said, one a week. And the first module has the potential to address all these things. And clearly, there's no way that you could cover all of those in an hour. But what we do is we cover what people bring. And that means that actually you could do this program a number of times and learn a great deal each time because the groups are always different. And therefore we cover different aspects. So that's the first module, know thyself. And the second module, having explored somewhat about knowing ourselves as individuals, then how do you lead yourself? How do we lead ourselves? And we do those first two modules before we ever look out into the wider world. Then the art of science and science of effective communication. And then we're looking at strategic visioning. And then we start to look at how do we understand others. and then looking then at the dynamics of teams, then exploring a little bit about AI and the different technical, if you like, aspects. How can we be adaptable and resilient? And then finally looking at empathy and innovation in leadership. And the final session is a session where you have the space to explore yourself with your group. How have I done? Where did I start? What have I learned? What are my next steps? And of course, having just spent an hour a week, there's all sorts of doors that we've probably opened so that people then can say, well, I was really attracted to that aspect. I realize how little I know. I want to do more on that, or things like that. And then the peers give their feedback in a positive and constructive way to help people really focus on what's right for them. And thank you, Charles. It's Does Trump taking the US throne overlap with the launch? It might actually. Well, no, I mean 21st. Is that the day? If it is, it might well. But I think this program is a lot more exciting than the Trump accession. Um, so, as I've said, 10 weeks, 1 hour a session, some pre-reading, and so on. And at the end, we have an alumni group on WhatsApp where we can explore ideas. And if people have particular issues, they can bring them. And the more people we have, as more alumni grow, then we'll be having more and more input on that. But it's a great way for people to stay in touch. And for those that want them, there are attendance certificates to that they can put on their wall with all the other ones they've got. So the full price, £725, including VAT, for the 10 sessions, and then the early bird price. So if anybody, for those that would like to sign up, there's the early bird price of 650, which is valid until Thursday midnight, so 2 days from now, and that's for the program that's starting this time next week. What you're going to get out of it? Well, I think that there's one or two people who've attended the program. I don't know what thoughts you might have on that, but for me, the fundamental is an increased self-awareness and understanding of yourself, and from that you have a broader vision. You're more congruent, you're more empowered, and that comes from within. So that leads to you being more centered, and that has an impact on the people around you. You're more inspiring, you're more attractive to other people, you're more dynamic, you're clearer sighted, and your access to your inner wisdom really is enhanced. And you'll also have a better sense of the masculine and the feminine in you, and the aspects that you might want to draw out a little bit more than you naturally have done. So, put it another way, more of everything you want to be. And of course, that is different for every person. Early bird price, 650, including that. Full price if you um, delay the decision, 725. I need to put in the chat the Um, yeah. I put the link in there in the chat. Yeah. So I'm just catching up by reading the chat. So there you go. That's you can scan the QR code or you can click on the link in the chat. Do that and join us for this next program, which is starting in a week's time. So having said all that, what questions do people have? What impressions do you have? Any thoughts, any ideas, any things that you'd like to raise? I don't know. And you can unmute yourself if you like. I also get feedback on how I bring grounding and calmness to the team. Is that a question, Renato? Are you saying, will you get that feedback?
I know it's a good point. It's often a feedback I get from my life journey. And when I'm working with another team, they feel I bring that grounding and that stability to everybody, Tom. So I always like that feeling of feedback when everybody's panicking, there's deadlines, there's things to achieve. They feed back to me. I bring that calmness. And with that calmness and serenity, the task becomes possible.
Yes, and I think I don't know whether Charles you would agree with this, but I think there's an aspect that came out quite strongly in the last in fact the last two programs of people saying this was a we created a safe space very quickly, which enabled people to um, express themselves uh, with a degree of depth and authenticity, which surprised them a little.
Yes, and it's a point from
I
the
agree.
craniosacral training I've mentioned before, Tom, of getting to know your inner sanctuary.
Mm.
Absolutely. Charles,
But
what?
yes, it was a say I'm sure it will be, but it certainly, in my experience, was a very safe space where very quickly people learn to trust and to be able to be very open with each other about many different things. It was a very good experience.
Hmm. Yeah, well, thank you. Andrew, I know you've been coming in and out. I guess you're challenged with your internet connection, but it's good to know that you're there. Any other questions that people would like to raise or um, queries?
Just that timely question I put at the end, Tom, of yes, do you embrace AI or do you ignore it at the stage of AI's evolution?
Well, I personally I feel you cannot nor should you ignore it.
Good.
I think the important thing with AI is to embrace it, to
Mm,
play with it, to experiment with it, because, as they said, AI is much more likely to uh, replace people who don't understand it or don't want to engage with it.
mhm,
I think that we have to bring a level of what's the word? Not cynicism, but challenge to the introduction of AI. I think, the announcements that they've made in the UK today and yesterday will, I think, make some people very cynical. And certainly, I was giving a talk to some head teachers just before
mm,
Christmas, and there were a couple of them talking about interviewing people and short-circuiting the interview system by using AI. And I really sounded made a sound of caution there because they were very simplistic. And the trouble with AI is that it, it it's as good as the input, and uh, when you're doing things like recruiting or indeed making decisions about things like insurance, it's very easy to say no.
mm,
And it's much harder to get the nuances because the nuances have to be programmed in. They have to, the AI has to learn this. So definitely embrace it, but embrace it with caution and making sure that you're not bringing naivety into it. That's the way I would answer that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi. Hi,
Oh,
this is Kara.
yeah,
Sorry,
Kara.
my camera's off, guys. Next time I join, I promise I'll turn my camera on. But and correct me if I'm wrong, but everyone else on the call, middle level managers, senior level managers.
We've had an extraordinary mix so far, and I really encourage that. We've had a couple of people who've been running their own organizations, actually a number. We've had a politician who retired from politics and wanted to set up their own business and had not actually run an organization before. We've had somebody who was really quite strongly on the autistic spectrum, who was looking to learn about themselves a lot more clearly. We've had people like Andrew, who's in Africa, who actually teaches leadership. So it really is. Some people say, well, you should focus. I actually, I think the diversity that we've had on the program has been one of its great strengths.
Right.
And so I think, Kara, you said that you're
Yeah.
an assistant.
Yes, I'm an assistant. And so the last gentleman that was talking about AI, embrace AI or not. So in terms of my support role, we still have a lot of folks here in my departments who are still very skeptical and unsure about AI usage. The neat thing is that, Thom, I have attended the last two ES Tech conferences where you have spoken and you have really, really boosted my confidence. And so I've been using AI in some capacity, since actually when ChatGTP first rolled out, November 2022, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But so I attend biweekly leadership team meetings, and I have asked for a standing agenda topic or time where I introduce one or two AI tools. We have Office 365 here, at the university, and so I started by saying I would like to introduce some of our Office 365 features that have, or AI tools that have AI features embedded in them. And so slowly, I think, people are starting to feel more comfortable, and being that it's right here at our fingertips and it's really streamlining work and stuff. And so I really appreciate you sharing this and opening this up for us. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you, Kara. It's it's really nice to hear that you were both of the ES Tech events and that, and the ideas have sort of percolated through. It's something we all have to embrace. It definitely is. I don't know whether this program is something that would be of interest to you or to other people at the university. You wouldn't be the first university people attending.
Okay.
And it's good to hear that view, because I know the other extreme is the American phrase I've heard many times before of turkeys do not vote for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm laughing, but I'm not sure. Wait a minute. Turkeys do not vote for things. Oh, okay. I'm thinking about the turkeys that the president pardons.
Well, the ones that
I mean,
everybody eats as well.
oh, okay.
It's
Oh, funny. And Thom, at the last ES Tech, you shared a handout titled something like why AI, why we're not embracing it, or
yeah, yeah. It was.
very powerful.
Ah, well, thank you. Yeah, no, it's everybody's terribly excited about AI, but they're not actually looking at the downside, and that is the creation of anxiety and the a sense of fear that it is creating in so many people, and we really have to look at that. We have to honor that. So yes, yeah. Well, we're nearly come to the end of this webinar. I want to honor people's time. I don't know, Suhair, if there's anything you would like to say from over there.
No, just wanted to be here listening to you, Thom. Thank you so much for this. It's a timely topic for our world right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. I was just curious to listen and be with you all.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Well, if there's no other business, then Cara, go to your boss and say you want to sign up to this program.
Okay, I have two of them, and so I will share with both of them. And fingers crossed, prayers, right?
Absolutely. It will get them all to join.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is something that is applicable across the board. No doubt
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah, and I think, having attended your ES Tech trainings for the last 2 years and stuff, I might be able to build a strong case here.
All right. Well, if you want to be in touch, drop me a note. You know, I'll just put my email in the there we go, in the chat.
Thank
So
you.
drop me a note.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Let's hope that we see you next week. Thanks, Charles. Thanks, Andrew. And thank you, Renato.